This is scary.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Revit Radio. For those of you just joining us, this is a couple new names in here this month. So this is a session where all you do is ask questions, and myself and Melissa will give you an answer. It might be I have no clue, you're stoned, but we will give you an answer. So I can focus on Revit architecture and Revit structure. Melissa does Revit architecture, and template and family stuff we're both good with. If it's MEP, we punt and we ask the fellow attendees to start asking some of those questions. So that's always a good thing. I would say all questions Revit. If it's MEP, it's going to be like, no. What are we doing here? So for those of you joining us, we are in Zoom. So we do have a question and answer pod. Please put those in there. Otherwise, there's a chat pod. And if you want to heckle us, comment on somebody else's questions, that's great to put in the chat pod. And in the chat pod, there is an option at the bottom, right, where you type your message to say to everyone or only the hosts and panelists. So if you want to give us crap, that's great. If you want to answer someone's question, that's cool too. You have your choice. So with that said, as we wait for some of those questions to come in, I had something that came up this month, and I actually tweeted about it. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. I actually tweeted about this because after I did this about 15 to 20 times, I realized, wait, I'm in Revit 22. There's a new feature for this. And what I was doing is somebody just ignore the wall types I'm using, but somebody actually had a whole bunch of series of like little column wraps, and they needed to move the column wraps to the grid intersection, right? So in Revit, how have we done this in the past? Move, go from this midpoint to here, move, oops, that was the wrong midpoint. Let's try that again so you don't totally screw up. Move it from this midpoint to here, right? Then move it from
how it goes, right?
Right, this is how it's always been.
And then you have to redo it.
That was so fun. But in 22, we have the capability to go to a snap. Oh, I gotta grab the move command first. We have the capability to go into a snap override of snap mid between 2 points. So we do have this in there. So now we can say I want to go between here and here. And now that's the midpoint. Woo! So you can go into your keyboard shortcuts. If you go into your keyboard shortcuts, I forget what it was. I think I just typed in mid. There is a mid between 2 points and S2 keyboard shortcut. Uh-oh, I didn't hear you, Melissa. Are you not muted?
It was more of a just mouthing sweet.
Woo! So we finally did get that in Revit 2022. To that same note, yeah, somebody's like, it is about bloody time. On that same,
I'll forget about it because it's been so long.
Yeah, I was laughing because I literally moved about 20 of the things, and then I was like, wait, that's a new feature. And I only had 3 left. I remember it. But it was really awesome for those 3 left.
At least you remembered.
Well, and I moved 2 of them, and it's like, oh, there's got to be a 2-key shortcut. So I went and looked for the 2-key shortcut. So, oh, it's S2. So literally, I only used the 2-key shortcut once. But I remembered, kind of. So it was there. The other thing that has gotten me, I don't know, have you done much work in 22, Melissa?
Not yet. Still making templates and older versions, just in case.
So yeah, I'm still doing the same thing, but I was in 22 the other day. And I don't know if a lot of people noticed another new feature in 22, and this was totally hosing me. The align command has been moved with the options from the options bar up to the ribbon, and the lock now actually works. So if I grab this and this, the padlock is automatically there. I created content for a client, and I was just doing this because I'm just like, hey, go hit the padlock. I'm just in muscle memory here. I went and flexed the family. It was broken. I go back and edit the extrusion and said, what the hell? Nothing's locked. I hit all those oh, wait, I'm in 22. So that is automatically there, which is really cool. This is honestly saving me a ton of clicks. Of course, then I went back to 20, created content for a different client, and then I was forgetting to hit all the padlocks. So, do good balance here for everyone to be thinking about on that. But with that said, once you turn it on in the family environment, and I'm just going to go finish the extrusion. Once you turn it on the family environment, it does also remember that for the project environment. And then I've started to realize that, oh, after I created that content for that client, I was manipulating some stuff in their model. I might have hosed some things in their model and accidentally turned on constraints. So do be careful of the align command in 2022 as well, that's great when you're in the family environment. But again, I wasn't paying attention to the fact that lock was on, and I'm like, ooh, I need to do this and I need to do this. And yet, guess what? I just locked all those.
Yeah, that's gonna bite some people.
Yes, yeah. I was doing something, I'm like, what did I do? I just closed out of the file because I realized it was happening. I was been in like 20 minutes. I'm like, yep, I'm gonna go redo what I did because I don't know what I did, and that's kind of it takes so long. Hindsight, after I closed out the project, I did realize that, oh man, you're an idiot. You probably could have used the reveal reveal constraints and found all the things in red. Damn it. But so it was hindsight. But yes, that is going to be be careful with the align command in Revit 2022 if you guys are in that.
Hey, move it up from the options bar. What is hi?
Actually, and I did not say this because I did not read this in the beta forums, they are getting rid of the options bar eventually. The goal is to remove the options bar because most people don't pay attention to it. And honest truth, what kind of bothers me about this is when, so go back to that little family editor, when you're like normally in a family and you're doing the align command, it doesn't open its own contextual ribbon, right? So if I go edit this extrusion and I go, oh, I need to go do my align command like I always do, I now am in a different contextual ribbon. So normally I'm like, oh, let me align this. I'm done, hit finish. I have to click to the other tab to finish. So yes, it isn't even coming up on the modify contextual ribbon in the family editor. It's its own contextual ribbon. So yeah, and to start thinking that they said eventually the align or the options bar, eventually, I think it'll take them forever. There's too many things that go to the options bar, but eventually if it goes away, I'm not gonna like this whole dual contextual ribbon theory. But, and again, that's just me guessing this because I did not read that in the beta or anything since I said I was going to start recording these. So is there anything
short-lived?
Yeah. Is there anything that you decided you have come upon recently, Melissa, that you want to talk about since we only have 2 short questions?
Oh, we do have one in the chat too.
Oh, Sean put a question in the chat. He knows better. I'm not going to answer it unless he puts it into the questions pod.
Sorry, Sean, you're going to have to copy that. Sean, that's not a question.
So the other thing I did want to talk about just briefly, and I don't know if I talked about this in a recent Revit radio, but this is a tool that I've been taking a lot of advantage of. And Melissa, have you guys used the model coordination at all on BIM 360?
No, I keep needing to jump back in and, realign myself to what they've done this week, but I have not.
So model coordination has been out, I think, for a little over a year now. And when they originally came out with it, is you could compare model A to model B. At least that's what I was originally told. And I'm like, that is completely stupid. So if plumbing and mechanical are in the same Revit file, I can't clash pipes to ducts, right? So this is done in a 2020 file. So what I have been doing with all of my design crew, I'm not saying this model coordination is ever going to replace Navisworks, or at least not in the near future. So just starting to come in here, and what I've been doing is I have been going into my architectural model, because the architect model links everybody's files in, right? We've got electrical, mechanical, IT, all of these other things in there. So what I've been doing with a lot of my clients, and they've added these to their templates, is the fact that I go in and set up a view for everything that I want to have in its own file to be clashing, right? So using this model coordination, I went into the architectural model, I went into a view and called it my ductwork, and I turned on all mechanical stuff, with the exception of diffusers, because every diffuser will be a clash in a ceiling. And I added flex ducts to the diffusers as well. But so what I do is I've set this up in every single discipline. I really wasn't expecting this view to take this long to open, but we'll see. I feel like Revit 20, when I go into Zoom and Revit 20 lately, it just goes super slow. But so you can see in this particular project, I've got one that's just ductwork, and then I've got one that's just duct terminals. And all I did was went into the visibility graphics and turned off all model content. And then in each one of the different views, I went into the Revit links for mechanical. I came in here and said, cool, let me go to custom. And then let me go to model categories and turn on what I want custom, and then turn on what I want for that in this view, right? And I've done this, and a lot of my clients have this in their templates now as well. So I've done this for each one of these. Then the last thing to do in your model is to make sure in your collaboration tab, if I can find the collaborate tab, is to go into your publish settings and make sure you go into these publish settings and say, okay, now I would need to make sure that I am publishing, if I find my BIM 360 one, everything that's going to be in the set. So my BIM 360 publishes all of those different views, right? So the reason why I'm doing this is I'm not waiting on MEP to publish their model, or electrical to publish their model, or any of these other people to publish their models. All I have to do is publish my one architectural model. And in this case, there's actually 3 architectural models for this building, like levels 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 are separate models, and then an exterior core and shell. So then I publish those. And what's really cool about that is then once those are published, I think I already brought it down. Once those are published, it will then find all of those views. It calls them models, but they're views that I've published, and I can start looking at the clashes. So the architectural roof to the architectural model, we have 25 clashes. The architectural roof to the architectural floors, we have 3 clashes. But you can start coming through here and looking at all the clashes that you have inside of here. And this is why I've broken down a lot of these different views. Like there's a view that just got architectural ceilings, a view just floors, because I don't want to run ceilings to ductwork all the time, because every vertical penetration, I don't model openings in all of those. And again, I also turn diffusers off in ductworks, because otherwise I get thousands of clashes. So if I go to ceilings versus mechanical diffusers, that's probably one of the ones with the bigger numbers here. I would guess it's this one, yeah, terminals, right? So you can kind of start to see the differences here. And what's really, really cool about this is I am just going to go into ceilings versus the duct is the interface, right? So Navisworks can do so much more than this. But what is cool about this is the graphic interface on it. That's where Navisworks sucks. That's why people are switching to like BIMTrack and all these other tools that are out there, is because you try to find these clashes in Navisworks and look at them. It's just terrible. So again, like I said, it's not going to replace any of that. But what is cool about this is for design teams, this is amazing, because I can just have this set up on the cloud. I don't have to send out NWDs or everything. I can tell everybody, go look at this model coordination and be responsible for your own stuff. Okay, I'm not going to go, I'm waiting for this to open, but I'm not going to go too far into any of, how this all works and everything, but just one of those things that really take a look at this. If you guys are using BIM 360 anyway, it works really, really well. And one of my clients, they had MEP who were not actually using BIM 360. So they were just using their model off of the server. But what they made them do is export NWCs for each one of those. And once they exported those NWCs, you can dump those into the same folder where your architectural model is, and you can use those NWCs to clash as well. But to me, this is where it's great. Look at the view. Look at how much this is way better than Navisworks. I can spin around. I can see all the clashes. If I grab a ceiling or an element, it highlights all the clashes that pertain to it. So this ceiling, well, actually it was only the one, but this ceiling has all of those clashes, etc. So kind of works really, really well. Can do this, and yes, Jason, you can use NWCs in a BIM 360 model coordination. Those NWCs just have to be in the folder your coordination space is going to. So yeah, that's what I've done on some projects as well. And then the last thing, which I didn't pre-open up Navisworks, you can actually open up all of these clashes in Navisworks as well. So you can store these views there and have Navisworks point to this. You don't append, you actually go to the Navisworks issues tab, and you can open up the file from the cloud there as well. So kind of some things, I'm still playing with this, I'm still trying to get into it, but I have been at the very least doing this to kind of go into my clients and say, yeah, look how bad you guys are. Like if I did duct to pipe on this particular project, there were like 4,000 issues. It's like, guys, kind of need to look at this. So that was it. Looks like we got a whole slew of questions now. So I'll stop talking about that unless there's any follow-up to that, Melissa.
Let's see, on there.
Nope, I think we're good. I don't see anything.
Although, because we did make Sean put his question back in the question and answer, we should go with that. It is a BIM 360 question. So Sean says we've been using BIM 360 for almost a year. Is there a way to bookmark a location in desktop connector so I don't have to expand every folder every time to get where I want to?
I don't think so. I don't think there's any way in desktop connector. Are you going through, no, you'd be, I don't use the desktop connector that much, but I would think you should be able to set a shortcut up through here. Whoops, would you not? Let me minimize this and this. If I were to go to this PC, go to my Autodesk docs, go to this client, sure, go to here, go to here. I would think you could go right click and drag. Can you not do that? And say, nope, that's a copy. Can you go Control C?
Well, that's what Sean's saying. It will link you to the cache and not the actual place.
Well, you can't ever actually link. Oh, you're talking, you want to link to your web page? You said desktop connector, so I thought you were talking to cache. We're going to see if it works anyway. New shortcut. Can I Control V that? Say next. Sure. Close this. Sweet. Yeah. So you can do it through a shortcut if you're talking to cache. Get that out of there. Where did you see his? Bookmark a location and desktop connector. That's what I assumed he meant. If you're talking online, I don't know. I've never tried to do it online. What does drive me crazy, and it really cracks me up, is if I come in here and open up a new tab and I try to go to BIM 360, the default site it takes me to is not my own. It's a client that I haven't worked with in 3 years, and oh no, it's a different one today. It finally went to
it. Helps every time I get into mine. My default's to yours.
You default to me? That's hilarious.
And we have like that one test hub.
That's hilarious. No, mine's been usually going to a different client. The client that I haven't worked with in like 3 years, and going to one of their projects, and it's like, really, why is this? And I've even tried clearing out like all my internet cache. It's like, oh, it's because it's cached in there and the cache is new. Yeah, so it's funny. If I go to ACC, yeah, Sean's like, these are all annoying. So I brought him up with a few people at Autodesk saying, really guys, really? At least when you go to the construction cloud, it just takes you to the default project list. So I skipped BIM 360, said, no, I'm done with BIM 360. I just go to the ACC and it defaults me to projects. So at least here I'm getting into it. Although I've got some new thing where I clicked on something I didn't realize I clicked on when a pop-up came up, and it gave me the preview of build. And so now every time I go into a project that's on the construction cloud, it says your build preview has expired. It's like, no, I wanted to go to docs, not build. So.
Yes. Sean said they'll have it fixed by 2028. And I think that's funny because we'll probably be like 2 totally different platforms on by 2028, right?
Exactly. We won't be in work. We'll definitely still be in the construction cloud, ACC, but it'll be another one on top of that. So.
Yeah, it'll be the new next coolest best thing. And they will get rid of something else that we all liked in this version.
Exactly.
Well, this is now recorded. But, I mean, it's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, I knew I was gonna post it anywhere. Especially when Sean's comment was, I'm playing that part of the recording in every meeting where people say, oh, we have these source, we have the model coordination tool now. So what other questions do we have?
Let's see. Oh, this is the other, the not Jason in the other ones.
I was just going to give Jason credit for not putting it in the question pod.
So Beth was asking, what's the dual color section mean? And I think that popped up while we were looking at the align. Yes, Beth.
Beth, can you follow up with that on dual color selection? Could it be my ribbon tabs?
Oh, yes. So it could be.
Yes, the blue and the red. It's because I'm running two
You can't pick.
color the tabs. because everybody always asks me about it, so I just have them both on.
She means the actual section mark, though, right?
She says the blue and the red, and this is blue. Oh, well, this is also blue and red. What are the odds? What are the odds? Okay, well, we'll just answer both of the sections. These are my working sections, and my working sections by default, I just have the head be red, so I can know this is something for working. The tail is red. The head comes in blue because since it is a hyperlink in Revit, it's there. So for me, I have a whole series of working sections and working elevations and blah, blah, blah. So this is just, hey, all of my working stuff comes in red. The reason this side is blue, it's just because that's the hyperlink you can double click on. So that's why this is red and blue. I also have filters to then change them all different colors and different views. So if I go to working view, or excuse me, printing views, they're usually turned off, but if somebody turns them on, I override the whole thing to be red, kind of like these ones are all half toned, etc. I use a lot of filters for that stuff, but yeah, this is my, hey, I've got working section heads. This is what they look like. I know these shouldn't ever belong on a sheet, so we're good to go. Cool, so yeah, it was the section. I don't have to talk about the color-coded tabs.
I mean, you might as well.
I thought you were talking about the red and blue colored tabs here. Melissa understood you way better than I did.
I feel like that's magenta.
Really? It's on my screen, it's total. I mean, it matches the same red there. I mean, I can put those together and they're the same on my screen. On
mine, it's fairly magenta, but that's okay.
You have a way nicer monitor than I do too. I've seen it. Tabs. I have two tools that give me the color coding tab. One is from Melissa's company, Parallax, which allows me to color it by project or by type, etc. And then PyRevit also has in its UI state, able to go into PyRevit settings under the settings here, and then we go into the UI part. Once it opens, it allows you to solid color it or border it. So when I get into this, I say, hey, on the projects, just give me a line across the top, but on families, give me a border. And it just even sticks out even more in my brain of, hey, this is what's going on, and here's how we have it doing it. So project style tab heavier and border heavier. So that's it. That's basically all the reason why those are two separate shades, is because I have two separate utilities, which I'm really impressed that you guys worked together to not make it like freak out Revit. Hey, we'll allow both of you to manipulate the tabs and not blow up Revit.
There's so many other ways we can blow up Revit. So.
Exactly.
gotta surprise people and not blow it up sometimes.
What's the next question we got?
Let's go, since you were talking about your shortcuts. Anonymous was asking if you can modify a function key to be a shortcut.
You can't. So if I go back into keyboard shortcuts, this time not using the keyboard shortcut, one of the things that you can actually see on the drop down too is what are called reserved. And you will see when you go into all reserved, function keys are reserved. So most of the function keys are going to be like reserved for Windows-based stuff, help, refresh, spell check, dynamic view, things like that, that are usually Windows-based function keys. And you can't change those. You can add to them if you want. If you wanted to grab one of these and add them, no, actually I lied, you can't even add to those ones. But if we just go to all of them and we choose one, I'm pretty sure you can't do like F2. Oh, you can, I lied. So sure, looks like you can do F function 3, and there you go. So yes, you can add. I don't know if you can do function and H, no. Let's see, yeah. Yeah, nope, not going to let you do 2. So you can do one of those if you wanted to. Looks like you're going to have to make sure it's not one of the ones that are already being used, like F7 for spell check.
There you go. So that probably means you can't reassign F1 to not open the stupid help website every time you accidentally hit that instead of escape.
No, just kind of like where I always laughed in the old school days of AutoCAD. You could always tell every draft or every AutoCAD user's computer because the keyboards have the freaking F1 key yanked off of the keyboard. The old school keyboards where you could pop the keys off. Every single CAD person had those off the keyboard. It was hilarious. And the ESC was worn off of the escape key. So you could always walk by and say, yeah, that's a CAD user, that's a CAD user. That person doesn't use CAD.
We had a few at my last firm that had created very lovely little paperclip contraptions. So it was still on, but the paper, so you could push it really hard, but you couldn't accidentally push it.
I did like Michael's comment over there saying that you can get programmable keyboards and you can map those tools to do different things.
Yes.
I think the biggest thing for me that I don't think enough CAD users, and I'm gonna really define my age here, is the one thing I really miss from the old DOS-based days is I miss the digitizers, but not because I like the digitizer, but because I like the puck. So you had the puck that had 16 buttons on it, so you could program anything you wanted to those 16 buttons. And I do kind of get that back now with mice, right? I have a mouse that's got like 6 buttons, so I can have those in there. Like when I'm orbiting in a 3D view, I never hold the shift key down because I have shift as one of those side buttons on my mouse. And I just don't think enough people take advantage of multiple button mouses to where, yay, see, my left hand is not on the shift key, but I'm still orbiting my model. Woo! I just think there's things like that. Like you can see I have control and I have shift. I have different tools added to my button, my mouse, so I don't have to constantly put my donut or my T down to be able to hit the stupid shift key when I'm orbiting. So I think that's one of those things that, yeah, and Sean's like Logitech gaming mouse. I think more people should take advantage.
Yep, Sean, Logitech gaming mouse. I actually did. I mapped 2 of my buttons to Control Tab and Control Alt Tab.
So you wanted to do the control.
Yeah, I wanted to be able to flip through without having to be all over there.
Yeah, I originally had that with like a side mouse, the scroll wheel I could go sideways with, but then I kept realizing every time I tried to zoom in and out, I was switching freaking views. I was like, damn it, this isn't working. So I had to shut that off. And I think Beth is looking to hire somebody. She just said Indeed. Sorry, there's been a lot of Indeed.com commercials on lately.
Commercial spot.
Well, we changed from styluses to the puck. See, Dave is also dating himself too. Yes, I really do miss the 16 button pucks, the way they felt in the hand. It's funny. All right, so what's our next question?
Let's see. Should we assume it's real Jason that put his first question in the question and answer?
Real Jason.
I'm assuming real Jason. What would cause a spot elevation to give different values when selecting the same structural family that is level? And I guessed right, it was real Jason.
Yeah. So when I put in a beam, really, I don't have any beams loaded in my template. Man, what a structure. What a slacker I'm at. Structural beams. Nope. Sure, that'll work. Great. So putting in my beautiful structural beam in here, which it's also going to be below my level. So I'm going to go change my view range real quick. That's easy to do. Make these unlimited. So when I look at this beam, if I'm not in wireframe and I am in medium or fine level of detail with this beam, when I'm doing that spot elevation, you definitely need to pay attention to what you're selecting. So when I'm doing that spot elevation, am I selecting top, bottom, top and bottom, or actual? So if you're on the actual and you happen to be like cutting through the beam, you could be on the angled slope of that C channel. So depending if I did it closer to the web or out closer to the edge, I'm going to get a different elevation because if I'm on selected, I could possibly get that sloping part of the beam. I have seen that happen before, which is really bizarre. It's kind of like, oh, wait, what's going on there? But also the thing here is like if I tag this in your C and I wasn't paying attention, it said bottom and then the next one says top, you're kind of going, wait a second, this is also the same beam, what's going on there? So I would hope that might be the problem. Again, if I cut the view range to be right through that, let's try. Let's do my view range. Let's go make this like -6 inches, should do it. I think I should be cutting through this. Where am I here? I am at the, where am I? I'm at the top, yes. So let me do a spot elevation again, and let me say selected and see if I can actually get this to work. No, because it's only giving me the edges. Still giving me the top, but I have seen that happen where it was a sloping flange like this and somebody got the different values that way.
So when you're doing that, it looked like the relative base was grayed out, but is that something that could be changed?
The relative base is grayed out also because I'm on a project elevation. It's only if I change this to be one that is pre-set up to be, I call mine relative, I guess not.
Relative.
Yeah. Yeah, I spelled that correct. Really, I don't even know how to pronounce that. We'll go to this one just because it's spelled correctly. Once you say relative, it's to what level are you associated to? So yeah, that would be something else. Melissa, if somebody did one relative to level 1, and there was another work plane and somebody did it to a different relative.
All right, real Jason, does that answer your question?
Nope, he actually followed up. He said he was in a section. The only other thing I could also possibly think of if you're in a section doing this, is one thing is if you are in a section and you do a spot elevation and I'm like, hey, let me do a spot elevation on this point, right? I'm getting the 99.2, but then if I switch to medium or fine, that's going to stay at the 99.2, depending on where those annotative lines are inside the family. And then if you did it live, I have seen somebody have those symbolic lines off. So it grabs the bottom of the symbolic line when you're in hidden line and it stays there. And then you go to, you know, like medium or fine, and you get a different one, even though they're looking like they're pointing to the same. But see, here's kind of what I was saying too on that slope. If I would have got the view range correctly, I could give it here. Sweet. What are you talking about? What are you doing to me here? Look at all those fun numbers I'm getting. So again, it could have been a
relative base thing.
You don't get the, in sections, you don't get those options. So if I even go back to, yeah, I'm in project elevation, you don't get all of that when you're in a section. Those only show up in a plan view. So could be that. It also, I just happen to wonder, and I'm going to play with this because we did this one on this side and this one on this side. What if we did a cross-section rotation of 0.2?
Ah.
The beam's level, it's just rotated. So even though both of these are going off of this bottom of the beam, you are getting different
sides.
So I don't know. I think there could be a lot of different things. I like this.
Twitchy.
That's just fun. I just want to go do that to somebody. Give it a 0.1 rotation. Nobody will really see it. And then you start getting all these really bizarre, what are you doing to me?
Not today, Satan.
Not today. Oh, I thought it was hilarious. In civil chat today, Brian Haley said he wants to go into, he used to go into people's machines, and you know, on Revit, we can change the double click option to do something. Well, in AutoCAD, you can make it do anything. So we had it where somebody did the double click option, something closed AutoCAD. So they went to go double click and edit something, it would just close AutoCAD. It's like, oh my God, that's awesome. I still would have done that in AutoCAD had I had double click options in.
Oh, so mean. Oh, yeah, you just got called an amateur. Oh.
0.00001. I don't think 0.0001 would actually change those numbers, because that's such a slight rotation that since Revit can only do, if I was in decimal inches and I went out to like 10 decimal points it would, but at 256 of an inch, you're not going to see that.
Yeah, in our template, we do have a very high tolerance made to catch the 0.00 whatever off.
My working dimension is very similar. So you get that, because even though it says 11 1/4, that's not 11 1/4. Wow. I couldn't have done that if I wanted to. Make it a good number here, but not there. Damn, usually I have to go like move this by 0.1 or something. So yes, I do the same thing, but I have that working dimension. Because again, even like you just said, Melissa, if I do that exact same dimension, but I switch that one out to be my project dimension, this is accurate to 256 of an inch. This is my, if I go into the accuracy of this, it's accurate to 256 of an inch. Oh yeah, did you notice they changed this in 2022 as well? Primary units and alternate units in your dimension styles? They broke them apart in different grouping. Got me the other day. Yeah, so this goes to 256 of an inch. You can see I have that there, but that's less than 256 of an inch. So I think it'd be the same thing, Michael, with the 0.0001 rotation. You'd have to have a spot elevation going out 10 decimal places. So Jason, hopefully that gives you some ideas on things to troubleshoot.
Yeah, super helpful. You just have to check all the things.
Check all these things and it's still not going to be one of those, but at least I had some sort of option for him.
All right, should we move on to pretend to Jason's question?
Sure.
All right. It says user is saying live links are no longer syncing together. Architectural model can't see MEP updates. When live linking, if changes are made to the linked model, when you sync, you should get those changes, or does it have to be reloaded?
You have to do a reload. So even though, and this is why I'm very careful when I'm assuming this is going to be fake Jason on a BIM 360 project. So all of my BIM 360 projects are set up to where a user goes in and we link to their live, Revit models, right? So we're not going through the whole publish and consume. We link directly to the folder they work in. And I always say it's almost live when I am giving a presentation, because if I hit synchronize, that is not going to trigger the architectural's model or the structurals or anybody other discipline's model to automatically start reloading that link. I could be in the middle of a command, it's not going to do that. Synchronizing also does not go in and reload links. All it does is take changes from your central file, your BIM 360 model, and bring them down. If you open it, it will open up all the links live. And this is why I say it's almost live. So if you open it, you're getting the latest version of that file that the discipline you had live, pseudo live linked in. You would have to go in and do a reload on the link. So you would have to go down to your links. You can either go to manage links if you wanted to. You can scroll down to your links down in Revit, right click and say reload, or again, go into your manage links and do a reload there. So you're not always going to see that it's not live every time somebody synchronizes. You do have to do a reload or close the project and reopen it.
So if somebody else had reloaded it and then they sank.
Somebody else reloaded it and then they sank and then sank.
I don't know. Synced.
They sank. They Titanicked it. Then you theoretically, when you synchronize, you should see it as well, theoretically. I do not see that happen all of the time. So for me, it's kind of like if I want to make sure I'm going to print and I need to see the latest of what they did, or the same thing, like I said, with my export, if I publish my Revit file, I always want to make sure those links are all reloaded before I go through and do any of that too. So yes, it's not live, it's almost live. It's Memorex. It's Memorex. I've already dated myself with digitizers. I'm just going to say it's Memorex. And for those of you who are old, you'll know what I'm saying. For those of you who are, under 40, you have no idea what I'm talking about.
But it's much more live than every Friday. They put it up on your FTP site and then somebody has to go download it and save over the other one or retab everything.
I had one project where the MEP guy was saying, well, you're lying to me. It's not updating at all. He had his file open for 3 weeks. He just kept synchronizing, going home at night, coming in the next day, synchronizing. And he's like, I have not seen any of these architectural updates. I haven't seen it for like 2.5, 3 weeks. We realized he never closed Revit and he literally had his MEP model open for 3 weeks. So that was when I realized that I have to be very cautious and say it's pseudo, it's almost live link. You still have to reload or effing close your Revit project more than every 3 weeks.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
I can't imagine that it didn't, like Windows didn't decide to helpfully randomly restart and update in the middle of those 3 weeks or
yeah, or anything else. It's just like, oh my God, are any members, every time he synchronizes, his resources are now maxed out. I was just like, oh my God. When was the last time you restarted his computer? Last year?
When he first got it.
Bought the computer, and when that one Windows update told me I had to restart.
Oh, it looks like Michael says he emailed you the amazing screen capture, so that means you can share, right?
Oh, I can pause this real quick just in case, I have some other sort of email that's
maybe he wants to see Brian's inbox.
Yeah, that just sounded dirty. No one wants to see my inbox. Nope, I don't actually have it in my email. So it's probably still sitting there. It's not floating somewhere.
All right, well, eventually.
And Sean was arguing on the 256 annoyances. And Sean, the reason why I care about this is when you start ending up in situations like this, I literally had this problem happen where somebody traced an AutoCAD file and every single grid dimensioned 20 feet. But at the end we got done, it was 20 feet some plus a half of an inch, right? So it was like 2,000 feet, 1/2 inch or whatever the number was. So there was that extra half of an inch because every single one of these was 20 feet, 0.0001. And by the end of it was a very large building. There was a half of an inch bust. And this point in time, the project was so far along, we're like, what's going on? So that one dimension, we had to set a dimension string up to round to the nearest inch because otherwise it was going to be too far. And thank God it was less than the half of an inch. If it would have been, 0.000001 over half of an inch, Revit would have rounded it up to be 22,000 feet, 1 inch, not just that. So it was ridiculous what it was. So yes, I do this. This is the only dimension string I use. And people laugh at me going, why do you care about this? What's the big deal? Well, if I do this and I make it correct, I don't see those numbers. The number goes short, right? And I purposely have this suppressing trailing zeros. So that way, when it is bad, I can just be cruising around a project going, why the hell do I have a very long dimension string? Somebody screwed this up. And I've seen multiple projects where because people have it rounding to the nearest even 32nd of an inch, I get busts in dimensions. So for me, nope, actual dimensions go to 256. If you see that, your model sucks. End of story. I'm not gonna be nice about it. Your model sucks. You should have paid attention. And then yes.
You should feel bad.
Nope, I'm a consultant. I get paid to tell the honest truth. And in the event, like it's an angled wall or there's some number where I need that to be, yes, I have a dimension string called rounded. My dimension string called rounded changes it to a very dark shade of red. So I know this has been a rounded dimension and there's probably a reason for it. And I have clients who follow the same procedure and weekly we go reset the dimension style back, the non-rounded one, the normal one. We go reset it back to 256 of an inch before people print and we watch all this stuff get bust on the prints. It's like, well, should have modeled it properly. Yes, I have clients who believe in my theory of be an asshole as a BIM manager. People will start following procedures.
Oh, nice. Okay, let's see.
And Jen, we're all jealous of you actually working in metric. Most of us actual people who know anything would much rather be on the dang freaking metric system.
Well, and I remember in school, we were gonna switch anytime now. We were gonna get with the rest of the world, but no.
Well, I laugh back in my younger DOS-based days of AutoCAD. I actually was working for a woodworking firm back then, and we switched to the metric system there because all the equipment we had came out of Italy and Germany, and everything was 5mm holes. You bought 5mm dowels. They were spaced 32mm apart. We just gave up having to convert some things and not other things. Just said, screw it, we're switching to metric. So our toe kicks were 100mm tall. They weren't 4 inches. We threw your shimmy. Everything we did was metric. You didn't get a 3-foot wide cabinet. You got a 915mm wide cabinet. And so even in AutoCAD day, we used the little alternate dimensions where we would have our metric here and then imperial units down there. And we had a lot of architects complain and we're like, tough, there's your equivalent. It's close enough. You're good. I just feel for people in like Canada, because it's really bizarre. In Canada, you use 3/4 inch plywood and you use 2x4 wood, but all the metal stuff is in metric. Because all their wood products get shipped to the US, so they just make all their wood products imperial units, but all the steel they get from other places, so it's all metric. So bizarre when I work with Canadian clients. It's like, oh yeah, we use 20M concrete. We make 300mm wide walls, but we put a 2x4 on it. It's like so bizarre. All right, so what's our next question?
Let's see, let's go to Brian's. Do you know of any good free plugins for arranging project parameters / shared parameters? Not super specific to Revit, but it's more of an annoyance or gripe with Revit.
It's definitely specific to Revit. One thing I will say is right now Autodesk is debating changing how shared parameters are working. So on the beta forum right now, there's a way to be able to test out your parameter files online in the cloud. So I would say go, if you're really, really interested in this, Brian, go sign up for the Revit beta if you're not already, and then start asking about the, I forget what they're calling the parameter or something. It's all cloud-based parameters. So we should be able to host all of our shared parameters in cloud and then easily say, hey, go push all these into the project or push all of these into the families. It's in beta right now. It's in very, it might even be alpha, but it's in very, very early stages, but something to give your opinion on. But for your specific question, I use DI roots a lot. And it's one thing that I would love about the DI roots is the parameter manager. And one of the things I like about this is you can just go see your shared parameters in a project. You can see where they're set up, etc. I don't know why it just disappeared. I can come down here to the shared parameter editor. I can add or load my shared parameter file, start to see all of the data inside of there. So we'll just load mine in. And it's going to tell me, oh, this is the parameter. It's this type of parameter. It's grouped under this. Here is all of the things you have capable of set up for that parameter. Here's the guide on it. So you can start coming through here and just seeing what's going on in here. You can add new parameters, hit save. It'll push it back out there. Jason's asking about the beta pro. I don't remember, Jason. I'll look in a second. But so yeah, you can start coming into here and seeing everything you have on there. Was there a description? It's a length. What grouping do you have it under? And kind of come in here and start looking at what's going on. I believe CTC has something too. Do they not, Melissa?
Yes, I haven't used it much. But...
Okay, because I that's one of their paid tools, and I have not broken down and purchased the CTC tools yet. But yeah, everybody's saying CTC shared parameter manager. So those ones are there too for if you want the DI roots. I would donate it to them, but their tools are free. So you can start coming through here. The only thing I wish this had was export. I'd love to be able to get this in a stupid Excel file just so I can play with my, not manipulate it necessarily, but get a version of it I can see a little bit better. But so yeah, you do have this here. And then it even goes into your parameters of like what categories. So this is in this particular project. These are project parameters versus shared parameters, what categories they've been assigned to. This is also nice. You can export this, but all exports is the 2 columns, not everything else I don't get. But so yeah, kind of some nice tools in here to play with the parameters or even see what's going on. And then you can even go into your families with the DI roots tools and say, hey, look, I want to grab these 3 families and add these parameters to it. Yeah, and Jen says she uses this tool and loves it quite a bit.
So much fun, but it's such a gigantic pain in everybody. That was always the fun thing, trying to explain to new people, like, okay, so you put this parameter in your family and now you've loaded that into your project, but now it's not going to actually do anything until you also load it into here, and then you need to.
Yes. So I had a weird thing, and I must have at some point in time taken my shared parameters and renamed it for a client, which you're not supposed to do, but because I loaded one of my files in and I loaded one of my parameters into their project, and my parameter name was called Fred. And I would literally say import Fred. And when I got into their project, it was called Bob. And you're like, what the hell is going on? So then I edited their shared parameter file of mine and looked for Fred versus Bob, and they have the same GUI. So I can't imagine that the shared parameter file would create the same GUI for 2 files. I mean, the odds of that are astronomical. My instinct is just telling me I must have at some point in time opened the TXT file, which you're not supposed to do, and edited the name at some point in time. But it was like, oh my God. It's like insane. So Brian's saying isolate by category and then organize. Oh, you can do that. So when you have the category here, you can sort by category. I don't think you can filter it by them, but you can then select all of them under that category. So yeah.
Tell Kara, thanks.
Yeah, and Michael said the CCT tool is way nicer. Yeah, I can imagine it would be. But again, that's an expensive tool versus a free tool.
It is.
So what's our next question?
Let's see. How about a way to batch plot drawings where you want your general sheets to be ahead of the A sheets?
Yep, hi Revit. you haven't downloaded and been using PyRevit for a while, and there's a lot of people now, like even EF Tools is an add-on to PyRevit that somebody else created. But the PyRevit, when you go into Sheets, there is a, where is the print? I'm assuming it was under Sheets. No, sorry, it's the big button here that says Print Sheets. If you go into the Sheets button, one of the things in here is you can print it based off of a schedule. So if you've got your schedule sorted and grouped like a sheet schedule, you can come down here and say, I want to be looking at this sheet list. So my sheet list is already alphabetical. I don't have to do anything else, and say go, and then it's going to print them alphabetically. So big, huge deal for that one. You can also see it gives it a little manual print index here. So if you wanted to, you could even manually go in and start playing with those numbers independent of what your sheet list is. I don't ever worry about that, because if my sheet list is set up, why would I ever need to go in and change it differently inside of this? So it's kind of there, and you've got some naming formats where you can change what you want the names to look like. There's some formats in here. So yeah, this is kind of one of the big things to look at here. This is one of the ones that most of my clients, who especially are printing to single sheet PDFs, or excuse me, single file PDFs, as opposed to individual sheets, like, oh my God, this is so much nicer. So yes.
See, I haven't been in 2022 enough to play, but weren't they also working on something natively in 22?
You were correct.
I remember playing with it at the factory, but I don't know how much of it actually.
You're right. 22. Oh, that was only for PDFs. When you went to 22, the PDF has a great tool like that. Where is it? I don't even know where the PDF is. And their add-ins. Where the heck is the export to PDF? Or it's under export. Thank you, guys. So under export, I know it's seen it somewhere. There's a PDF, and the export to PDF has a lot of great things like that. Like, oh, gee, what are we going to do? How are we setting this up? But I don't remember if this actually even has a do it in the correct order. There's an export setup. I think it's this.
That part didn't make it necessarily.
Yeah, I don't remember. But yeah, it's the export to PDF. You go to select views. Somebody said you go in here and say select views. Yeah, well, duh, I've got to be more than one. And then you edit this. But I still don't know if it lets you do them in order. I only want sheets. No, I don't want in session. I only want sheets. It's just file probably has like 0 sheets in it. But I don't know if there's a way to say which order. At any rate, the export to PDF has some tools in there. I haven't really gotten into this too much because, again, I still mostly am printing out via Bluebeam because you get more data. But yeah, so to my knowledge,
have the automatic orientation between portrait and.
You did have that, which was very nice. But to actually print it normally, if you're not talking to PDF, yeah, get the PyRevit tool. It's just so much easier.
Really, just get PyRevit. I think that's.
DI Roots has one as well for printing, but I've never used it. So DI Roots has something for. Oops, there's an update for that. I think it's
something new.
The Pro Sheets. I think it's Pro Sheets, but they also have one in here too. I think that might be great. They also have one in here. Like, it was really cool. You can export, print, and like export the PDF, print the sheet, and export the DWG all at the same time using their one little tool. I thought it was the sheet generator, but obviously I need to update it. So works really, really well too, because I have had one client like, well, we've got to export every sheet to DWG at the same time. It's called Pro Sheets. Yeah, there we go. Maybe that one doesn't need updated. There we go. So you can come down here and say, okay, these are all the sheets I want. I do not know why it keeps doing that. These are all the sheets I want, and then here's the formats. Sure, all of them. And then you can say formats. I want to go to PDF, DWG, all of the things, etc. But I'm not even sure if this one will go into the order that you're thinking of as well. Like, again, I don't know if this one does it in the right order either, which it doesn't look like it does.
All the formats though.
Yeah.
Get your NWCs. Oh, DWFs.
Yeah, so export to NWC. Again, I've never exported individual sheets to NWC. So, and we're American, we don't use IFCs. So for Jen, who's in Europe, might be a big deal for you too. Who knows? You can also create sheets, but yeah, cool. All right, what else we got? Technically, we have 3 minutes. I think we're going to go long on the first recorded Revit radio.
Oh. All right, so Dave is asking for your families where you link them together to make more complex shapes, such as concrete. You include an option to turn off the boundary lines. How do you avoid getting a half line for the family, for instance, below?
Oh, so there's two things on that. One of them, and this is a little known feature that people don't go into, is in your setup for printing, there's a checkbox for region edges mask coincident lines. So you actually can say if there's a hidden line on top of another line, that'll keep it from printing. So a lot of times if you got like an invisible line on top of a really fat line, you still see half of that fat line. This little button can get rid of that just in general on everything. Where I found out this isn't the greatest is you guys have all probably seen like a half-tone grid line is over the top of your wall. The half-tone grid line will then become parent when you actually print. So you might be toggling this on and off depending on the type of print you're doing, but if you're printing like details where you've got a lot of that stuff happening, you can just have that in there. The other question that he was asking, and I'm going to go back to my recents because it's probably in my recents here, is when I do have a detail file, a lot of times I don't worry too much about those lines overlapping. I'm pretty sure this is where you were talking about, but I literally in a lot of my families have and this one I'm showing you is not going to have this, but in a lot of the families I get into, I have a pre-built-in masking region that goes too far. So on this one, you can see that I actually just drew this line, this box down a little bit farther, because again, if I do this and I put it right on the edge and then I go back to fat lines, you'll see that that line is still coming through. So by leaving that just down a little bit, this doesn't print. It's really weird. When you zoom in, you can see it, but it doesn't actually print, or when you zoom out, it disappears. That's just all I do, and I don't really care. If there's a little nick here, I'm not going to get an RFI on that. I don't care. So there is that. Cover the coincident lines or whatever it was called, as well as a lot of times I do this. But yes, there are other tools. Like if you look at this one, when I go into the type properties of this, I actually have a little masking region coming up on that, and I call it my mask offset. So you'll see I've got a masking offset. We'll just go make this something fun like 1 inch, where I do make it to where I want to line this up, but I do need to cover out that line so I can put that little mask offset in there and get that to go up. So we do have a lot of that set up and can go through, and I build that into a lot of the families to go ahead and mix that in as well. So hopefully, Dave, that answers your question.
Cool, I guess that's a yes, hopefully. Okay, then our last question is, I've been struggling lately with linking and binding large files. It will get to a certain point with the bind procedure and then time out. Any thoughts on the procedure in general, and any tips on how to prep a model to be bound?
Yeah, I run into this often too. Revit does not like to bind. I'm not going to say large files because large implies file size. How about I say busy files? Is that a better term?
That's pretty good, even though their pop-up does specifically say.
Yes, and when you do it,
large files.
Oh, what was the thing I ran into today? Oh, I ran into something very bizarre. So remind me to come back to that. 3D DWGs, remind me to come back to that. But no, so for me, when I am binding, yes, there are times where I get into that bind, trying to bind that large linked model, and it just will not do it if it gets too large. You know, if it's something that you pull off to the side that you can afford to go into, a lot of it is just start going in and, delete everything that's, model lines that you don't need, things like that. Like I said, it just doesn't do well on large, busy files. So if there's a lot of things in there, I go use a search to find anything that's got CAD imports in it. That stuff I just delete. A lot of those things, and you see, most of the time I can eventually get the file in. But again, to what detriment am I getting that file in? How much of that stuff is gone because I had to clean the model up so much? So yeah, it does suck. There's nothing else I can say about it. That is life. And like Melissa said, it really, really, really does come in and say, hey, you can't do too much data when you're doing this. two things. One thought on that too, and this is going to be a terrible file to do this in, but I don't think a lot of people know that when you go to a sheet, I don't know if people know this. Did you know you can right click on a sheet and say save to new file? And in the save to new file, it'll create a whole new Revit file for you with just what's in that view. So a lot of times if I need to get just like a portion of a building help, like even a mock-up, I got people like, hey, I need to go do a mock-up. I only need this particular part of a wall section. I will create a 3D view with a section box that I can only see that wall section, put it on a sheet, and then right click and say save to view. And then it goes out. It will take the entire length of the wall and the windows where I've got the wall section or anything else, and the floor I'm sectioning through, but all the other stuff that's outside of that section box just doesn't come along for the ride. So this is a tool I learned, and to answer your question here, Rowan, this is a tool I learned, I think back in Revit 2008. No, probably before that.
Yeah,
it was after Revit 9.
Definitely in 2019, because I just looked.
It's been there at least for a decade. But yeah, save the new file, it'll take that stuff out. So this works really, really well for that. And it does create an RVT. I will say I did learn something that I was going to talk about and come back to that I did learn this week. But did you know when you're exporting out, the scale matters when exporting to DWG? I had a client who was literally trying to export out like a building that was 50 feet by 20 feet. And it kept saying, the file size is too large. The file is too large. The file is too large. We're like, it's a 50-foot building. I've exported out freaking buildings that were 6 blocks long. She had the scale at 12 to 12. We went back and changed the scale to something small, exported just fine.
Wait.
Yes, that one blew me away. That should not be a thing that the scale matters when exporting out to DWG and how much data it's exporting.
That's so funny. So
Yeah.
Revit hates things off in space, but if you try to export something at real life size, it also hates that.
Yeah, as long, yeah. So I mean,
Try, but
on the Brian tip, because I learned this from Paul Aubin actually. I always have my 3D view scale very, very large because I don't want to have to turn thin lines on in my 3D view. So just by changing the scale, you don't have to play with turning thin lines on and off. So sure, my fat lines are on when I'm doing everything else, and in my views, I changed scale to be like 3 inches or something to get rid of all the line weights. And that's what she did as well. And that's when we found out, oh, exporting DWG with a large scale doesn't work. Let's try it. I just got to see if a 12 to 12 thing, oops, cancel. If a full scale view on this tiny little thing will export. I just got to see. Export, DWG. She was going into solids. No, I do not want to put this under my templates folder. That would be a terrible place to put this. No, so it did export this, but yeah, it was funny. It was like, oh, interesting. Now I'll go back and do another export, change my scale and see if in the DWG it's a different size. So yes, so hopefully, I don't remember who asked the question on the binding, etc. If you only need binding it for just certain parts of the model, because I do have a lot of interiors people that when they go to render, they bind in the architect's file for rendering in a rendering model so they can change the paint colors, etc. on the architect's walls. And I have shown them that tool like, hey, you're only working on this one part of the building for rendering, do a 3D section box, save that, put that on a sheet, save that to a Revit file, link and bind that in. And they were like, yeah, that just saved us days worth of work. Thank you for that. So, and Melissa didn't now learn something new as well.
I know, now you're going to be exporting all sorts.
Oh, I love it for that. Like, I had a client where I just needed to do a simple little walkthrough for the client on this crazy handrail in this art pavilion. And so, yeah, I just did a section box around it, said export. I got the walls and floors and ceilings and said, here's your handrail. And I could just have this very simple, and it worked great for the 3D DWF and everything else I gave them. So I use it not often, but I use it probably once a month.
That's pretty good.
And on that note, especially since we're 7 minutes over, I thank everyone for coming to Revit Radio. One thing I will say is, it's not like we make money on this. Sure, Melissa, we talk about Parallax and the cool tools and things they do. I'm a consultant, I get work from this, but this is all about trying to further the industry. We don't get paid to do this. We're not making any marketing dollars. We're, actually not making money while we're doing this. So just tell your friends, families, this is all about making the industry better. We don't market this or anything. So tell, anybody, if you go to a user group, mention it, because the more people we have, the more questions we get, the more we all learn. And on that note, we're going to go ahead and stop this. And so thanks, everyone. Hopefully we'll see you next month.